out of Minnesota.
No plans to pull out of Minnesota.
How would you describe what you were seeing on the ground there? Would you describe it as an insurrection? And do you believe the president should invoke the Insurrection Act?
I describe it as violent. And a violation of the law in many places. I discussed with the president this morning several things that we are dealing with under the department and different operations. We did discuss the Insurrection Act. He certainly has the constitutional authority to utilize that. My hope is that this leadership team in Minnesota will start to work with us to get criminals off the streets. Remember, we are there in surged operations because of the largest fraud scheme in American history. We had people stealing from taxpayers, stealing funds away from the most vulnerable individuals in this country, people who needed mental health services, developmental services, autism, daycare. Instead, individuals came in, much from the Somalian community, and stole dollars from those people who needed it and put it in their own pockets and enriched themselves. Did it right under Governor Walz's nose. And we believe that he didn't just know about it, that he may be complicit in it as well.
Do you believe there are any cases in Minnesota where the ICE agents have gone too far?
Our ICE agents are following the law and running their operations according to training. Last night, what we saw was 3 individuals weaponize shovels and brooms and attack an ICE officer that had to defend himself. So we're hopeful that we don't see that again, that these protesters and violent rioters will be held accountable for the actions that they're taking and that our officers can do their work safely.
What about that officer that you were mentioning? Can you give us an update on that ICE officer's condition after he was hit with the shovel? And then we're seeing those cars looted in Minnesota. Can you provide an update on what the agency is going to do about that, and if you're concerned with the documents that were taken by those?
Well, I believe that those vehicles were FBI vehicles, not our Department of Homeland Security vehicles. So I'm not certain what documents were in there that those criminals may have taken and seen. But I would say that our agent is beat up, he's bruised, he's injured, he's getting treatment, and we're thankful that he made it out alive.
Secretary Noem, are you okay with federal agents and officers violating people's Fourth Amendment rights by asking for papers without reasonable suspicion?
Every single action that our ICE officers take is according to the law and following protocols that we have used for years, that this administration has used, that the previous administration used. They are doing everything correctly, and over again in litigation in the courts, we've proven that they've done the right thing.
Why is it within their right to do that? Why is it within their right to ask for papers without reasonable suspicion?
With the president, sorry, I'll leave it. But you said you discussed the Insurrection Act with the president. Did you recommend that?
No, we just discussed it, that it was one of the options that he had constitutionally, and we talked about the fact that we're going to continue our operations in Minneapolis and have the resources that we need to get the job done.
Do you think he'll likely invoke it?
Yes.
How many tankers is our Coast Guard tracking that are loose, and are any of them out of the Caribbean that you're tracking worldwide?
I can't speak to the specifics of the operation, although we are watching the entire shadow fleet and how they're moving. I'm very proud of our Coast Guard, how they've partnered with the Department of War to do unprecedented actions and bringing these flags under jurisdiction that often, or these ships under jurisdiction that in many instances aren't flagged or they're affiliated with a country moving this unauthorized oil to avoid our sanction policy.
Did the president say what?
Yes. What's that?
When like the video that was posted this morning, do you watch any of those operations?
Absolutely, I do. Absolutely, I do. Yes, absolutely, we do. We haven't slept a lot lately between the Coast Guard operations, what they're doing in partnership with the Department of War in dealing with the shadow fleet. What we're also doing as far as operations with law enforcement across the country. The Department of Homeland Security is very busy.
Can you respond to
yes.
Madam Secretary, perhaps to follow up? Why are we seeing Americans being asked on the street to provide proof of citizenship in Minnesota? Is that targeted enforcement? And are you advising Americans to carry proof of citizenship?
In every situation, we're doing targeted enforcement. If we are on a target and doing an operation, there may be individuals surrounding that criminal that we may be asking who they are and why they're there and having them validate their identity. That's what we've always done, in asking people who they are so that we know who's in those surroundings. And if they are breaking our federal laws, we will detain them as well until we run that processing.
Are you concerned that say what the final straw?
I'm going to go right here.
Do you think that there needs to be an Insurrection Act invoked?
Oh, I think that the president has that opportunity in the future. It's his constitutional right, and it's up to him if he wants to utilize it.
Do you think he's likely to do it?
I don't know.
But
That
if
is
he
not
leaves
the
the
way
situation,
would it lead to more deadly killings in Minnesota if the Insurrection Act is invoked?
If anything doesn't change with Governor Walz, I don't anticipate that the streets will get any safer or more peaceful. Governor Walz and his leadership team need to come to us and find out how we can work together like we have in many other states. We didn't see this kind of reaction in Louisiana when we ran our operations exactly how we are running them in Minneapolis, but we had a very different response because we had leaders that were working with us. If you saw our operations in Florida, extremely successful. In Minneapolis so far, we brought hundreds of criminals off the streets that were dangerous to society and dangerous to that community. We would wish that Governor Walz could take an example from the governor of Louisiana, the governor of Florida, and work with us to do the right thing for his people.
Your officers are dealing with more and more protesters. Do you think we need more de-escalation training, though, given some of the scenarios we have seen? Videos of interactions?
You know, the officers that we have out there are very highly trained and skilled, specific for the operations that they're doing. They're utilizing the most gifted individuals on these operations to go out and to do enforcement, because many times if they're going after murderers, they're going after professionals and gangs and terrorists that are here in our country illegally. And I'll remind you, the only reason we're in this situation is because the Biden administration allowed 20 million people to come into this country unvetted. My every day is spent thinking about the known terrorists that are in this country that I just haven't found yet. The suspected terrorists, the criminals, the murderers, the pedophiles that are out there on the streets that we need to find and get off the streets because Joe Biden opened up our borders and allowed that invasion to happen. If you can imagine the kind of dysfunctional criminal gangs and organizations that use that open border as an opportunity to infiltrate America, it's overwhelming at times. And that's why President Trump is so strong at taking action and making sure he's in every single state following through on his commitments to every single citizen.
Did the president say what his final straw would be to invoke the Insurrection Act if he did?
No, this president uses all the information and intelligence that he can get. That's why he calls me, he calls Pete, he calls local law enforcement. He talks to those individuals and agents as well that are involved that he knows well. This president makes fully informed decisions and utilizes his authorities when it's appropriate.
Are you worried that bringing in the military
Marina
would
Machado is
inflame the
coming to the White
situation?
House today. Are you going to be in the meeting because a lot of illegals are from Venezuela?
I think
or are you going to talk with Delcy Rodriguez like Trump?
I think I have other commitments today. We are putting in the new commandant of the Coast Guard. He is having his swearing in ceremony, so I'll be doing that. And then I have some meetings with law enforcement. So I will not be in that meeting, but the president will keep me informed.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Number 2 at ICE.
Nobody wants to talk to you, Miguel. We ain't got time to take your meeting, Pablo. I have other important shit to do today, Julio.
No more money for you. It's lazy. You lazy. You lazy. No more money for you.
Top of breaking news in Minneapolis tonight. We have reports that federal agents were involved in a non-fatal shooting. There's now a massive police presence in the area, as you can see on your screen, along with protesters and observers. Folks, there is still a lot that we do not know. The Department of Homeland Security claims that law enforcement was conducting a targeted traffic stop of an undocumented immigrant and that the driver took off and later crashed his vehicle. They claim the officer caught up to him on foot and that a struggle took place, which ultimately involved 2 more people from a nearby apartment. At one point, this is according to a DHS official, they claim the officer fired defensive shots, hitting the original subject in the leg. They go on to claim that the officer and the subject are both in the hospital and that the 2 people who ran out of the apartment are in custody. Again, that is all according to the Department of Homeland Security and a statement it issued less than 2 hours after the incident. By the way, it's important to note today marks 1 week since an ICE agent shot and killed Renee Good. Responding to the incident on social media, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche wrote the following, quote, Minnesota insurrection is a direct result of a failed governor and a terrible mayor encouraging violence against law enforcement. It's disgusting. Waltz and Frey, I'm focused on stopping you from your terrorism by whatever means necessary. This is not a threat, it's a promise. A stunning statement from the Deputy Attorney General. MS Now's Jillian Frankel joins us from Minneapolis. Jillian, I know you've been out there all evening since this news broke. I just laid out what the Department of Homeland Security has said. Tell us what the situation is like where you are and if there's any new information.
Simone, is still a very active and chaotic scene here on the ground in northern Minneapolis. I want to show you just seconds before you came to us. These federal agents took someone to the ground right on this corner here. I'm going to have my photographer show you, and there's still a gathering of them now. These protesters, these locals have run up. These agents are just there on that corner here. We've been continuing to see flashbangs. We saw pepper balls being deployed earlier. It's a very chaotic scene. I want you to just continue to watch as this unfolds, as these protesters converge on these federal agents. I just want you to continue to watch. It's a very chaotic, active scene here.
Jillian, are the crowds growing?
Just monitor, yeah.
Are the crowds growing? Are people leaving the area?
The crowds are sort of moving. We actually started further down. I would say now there are still many people, as you can see, moving in on this area just in front of us here. But certainly the crowds, I would say, are sort of spreading across the area here along the suburban area of northern Minneapolis, Simone.
And Jillian, the area that you are in that this is taking place, what can you tell us about the area, the number of law enforcement or estimate of number of law enforcement agents that are still in that area? This looks to be residential by my estimates, but you've been in the area for a few hours now.
Yeah, it's a residential area in northern Minneapolis. In terms of the federal agents, it's a bit hard to tell. We've certainly seen dozens of them blocking intersections here, trying to keep this crowd back. There's also, obviously, they're in these vehicles moving, and many are on foot as well. But I would say somewhere in the dozens just in this area. There was earlier crime scene tape as they were trying to sort of block off parts of this area. Now, obviously, you can see these vehicles are moving through here, but in terms of rough estimate, I'd say in the dozens for now.
Thank you, Jillian. We appreciate your reporting. We'll let you go. Come back to us if you have any breaking news. Folks, we did just learn from the city of Minneapolis that the injury to the man who was shot is not considered life-threatening. We also learned that the mayor and the police chief of Minneapolis plan to hold a news conference in about 15 minutes. We will, of course, bring it to you live as it happens. As I mentioned, today does mark 1 week since an ICE agent shot and killed Renee Good in Minneapolis. And I want you to consider this. There could soon be 3,000 federal immigration agents in that city. That's 5 times the manpower of the Minneapolis Police Department and nearly equal to the total number of officers in the region's 10 largest law enforcement agencies combined. It's also equal to about 1 agent for every 1,000 people living in the Twin Cities. And that's according to the Minneapolis Tribune. That could help explain why today we heard Minneapolis officials call it an, quote, invasion and a, quote, occupation as they told ICE to get out of their city. State and local officials have filed a lawsuit to curb the agency's presence there. And today, a federal judge put off making an immediate ruling to do just that. The judge gave the federal government until Monday to file its response to the lawsuit. With that, let's bring in our midweek nightcap. Sabrina Siddiqui is here, national politics reporter with the Wall Street Journal. Leanne Caldwell, chief Washington correspondent for Puck. Sam Stein, managing editor for The Bulwark and MS Now political contributor. And veteran Washington correspondent John Harwood. He's a distinguished fellow at Duke University and columnist for Zateo on Substack. Also,
Ms. Cantrell in the chat would like to ask, why is she bald? None of us know. None of us know. There is an epidemic of baldness in Black women in particular. I don't have an answer for it.
So with us is Barbara McQuaid. She's a veteran federal prosecutor and former U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Michigan. I just want to remind you all, if I interrupt anyone, it is in fact because we're going to go to that press conference. Barb, I want to start with you, and I want to start in Minnesota. You've worked along federal law enforcement, especially in light of what happened tonight. What does it do to a local community when you have this overwhelming force of outside law enforcement come in like this?
Simone, it seems to me sort of the worst practices of law enforcement. So much of what law enforcement needs to be effective is the trust of the community that it serves. I once had a police chief say to me that the most important thing a law enforcement leader can do is to bring calm to chaos, to try to get the public to work together with law enforcement to achieve mutual goals. After all, we are the governed, the people and the law enforcement need to work.
You know, I disagree. I'm not a professional. You know, technically, I was a criminal more than a cop, right? I was way closer to criminality than law enforcement. However, I think the most important job a law enforcement officer can do is actually arrest criminals. Like, it's literally a one-job situation. You have one job.
Together through community policing. When you instead have the appearance of an occupying army trying to harm the very people it's intended to serve, it creates that chaotic situation that endangers the public, the suspects, and the law enforcement agents themselves. I'm sure there are ICE agents who are out there who are not enjoying this assignment whatsoever because of the situation they have been put into that is so toxic.
Oh, no, that's absolutely not true. Most of these guys are loving it. Most of these guys are enjoying it right now. It was either this or learn the code.
Barb, as folks can see on the screen, there are a lot of people out on the streets of Minneapolis tonight. There have been folks out on the streets of Minneapolis throughout the course of the last week, just trying to record and even just observe what ICE is doing. Yesterday in federal court, a Department of Justice attorney argued that there is no First Amendment protection for observing police. I was struck by this. What is your reaction to that assertion?
Yeah, one, it's an open question. And two, I think the better argument is that, of course, there is. What they're relying on is a finding by the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals, which does cover.
People who are standing on the sideline just watching and holding up their phone, they don't typically get shot in the face. It's not a thing that usually happens when you're just watching on the sideline passively, you know?
Minnesota that said it was not a clearly established right. That came up in a different context where somebody was suing a law enforcement official in a civil matter. So I think it's not dispositive of the issue here. The strong argument that was made by amici in that case and by the plaintiff is that, of course, there is a First Amendment right. If there's a First Amendment right to report the news, there must similarly be a First Amendment right to collect that news. Now, certainly people don't have a right to interfere with law enforcement officers. If they're asked to step aside, clear some space, make sure that law enforcement officers are able to do their jobs, that's one thing. But to say you don't have a right to record what's happening, that's nonsense.
Sam, let me come to you because Donald Trump seems to be very good at picking issues and very bad at picking solutions. And it would seem to me that Americans did want some action on immigration enforcement in this country, whether they lived on the border, whether they lived in the middle of the country. It doesn't seem to me that Americans signed up for these videos that we are seeing. We've got some shocking new videos from the streets of Minneapolis every single day. And then you have Joe Rogan, of all people, comparing this to the Gestapo. What say you about what's playing out in the streets of America?
Well, it's heartbreaking, right? I mean, what you're seeing now is a major U.S. city basically being invaded by the federal government agents against the will of a lot of people there, and of course the elected leadership there. And I can't get over that Todd Blanche statement. I mean, if you read between the lines, he called both the governor and the mayor they're engaging acts of terrorism. So we're at a place where I don't think we've ever been, at least in the modern era. And then you are referencing the political backlash to this, which I think is actually quite profound. I mean, you look in the polling now and numbers of people who say they're not supportive of the actions of ICE are skyrocketing. There's a couple polls out there now where people are saying they support the abolition of ICE more so than they oppose it, which is shocking to me considering where we were 2 years ago, 1 year ago in the conventional wisdom there. And as you referenced, Joe Rogan and others coming out against this, it doesn't mean that Donald Trump isn't fine with this. I mean, I think Trump doesn't particularly mind these visuals. I think he likes the idea that they are cracking down on some bad guys, and I think he likes the pretext to go after it further. But it could also be that they are dramatically overplaying their hand politically here.
And I just want to note for people who are watching on the screen, what folks just saw while you were speaking, Sam, is it seems to be protesters engaging with some local law, some law enforcement. We don't know if they are federal agents. It seems to be federal agents. This is playback right now. But Sabrina, I mean, this is just one instance in Minneapolis and one protest. We saw this play out in Chicago. We saw similar images playing out in Los Angeles, right here in Washington, D.C. If you look at the polls, the majority of Americans actually who have been asked, they think the shooting of Renee Good was unjustified. Meanwhile, you have a former ICE agent of about 25 years of experience telling Time magazine this. I'm going to read it. Quote, "I'm embarrassed. The majority of my colleagues feel the same way. It's an insult to us because we did it the right way to see what they are doing now." You're talking to folks all the time. Are mainstream Republicans, are they proud of what they're seeing play out right now?
I don't think that they're proud of it. And look, you have the polling that exists on immigration as a broader issue where President Trump still performs fairly strongly if you're talking about border security. But when you look at ICE, what we've seen in our polling at the Wall Street Journal, and it's reflected in polling elsewhere, is even before the events that we're seeing unfold right now in Minneapolis and before the killing of Renee Good, the American public...
Hey, Uncut Underground. You didn't tell me the Great White Crash Out was going to be a bunch of liberals having a snowball fight. I don't think you can count this as a win.
You
got it wrong, bro.
The public felt like the tactics that were being deployed by ICE were going too far. They didn't like, and I've heard this from voters, I've heard it from pollsters, I've heard it from people who voted for President Trump. They didn't like seeing ICE agents patrolling their neighborhoods and picking up people who are working in restaurants and showing up at people's schools and just arresting their neighbors and apprehending people off the streets. And so that's where I think the Trump administration had already overplayed their hand. And now you see the kind of escalation and the scenes that are unfolding in Minneapolis. One thing I do want to highlight is, we all witnessed.
Ty City, I remember that episode. Nobody in your chat thought the Great White Crash Out was going to be a bunch of liberal women having their moment. All these lonely incel liberal chicks are flicking their beans right now, trying to impede ICE and get accosted unjustly.
The shooting of Renee Good because it's on video. My colleagues at the Wall Street Journal produced an investigation where there have been 13 instances where immigration agents have fired at or into civilian vehicles since July alone. 8 people who were shot, 2 people, including Renee Good, who were killed. 5 of the people involved in these incidents were U.S. citizens. And what we're seeing is not just, poor training for a lot of these agents who are out there, but their actions being supported and almost encouraged by the administration, which is why I think this is really just the beginning.
Leanne, I want to go to the point about ICE, and Sam noted you do have some folks now who are talking about perhaps we do need to abolish ICE, but when you talk to Democratic elected officials, particularly folks in leadership, Democratic leadership in the House and Senate, they are saying abolish is too far. I spoke with Jared Moskowitz tonight on our show on the weeknight. They're not for abolish, but they are for reining in. Congress did infuse about $170 billion in the One Big Beautiful Bill to ICE just last year.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up the money, because the amount of money that Congress appropriated for border security and interior enforcement is worth 3 years of regular funding that they usually get. And that is just for in this one bill. That does not include the appropriations process that Congress is currently fighting over right now for DHS because of these incidents. And
speaking of these incidents, I want to hear more about what happened between the agent and those people with shovels.
DHS says at 6:50 p.m. Central Time tonight, quote, federal law enforcement officers were conducting a targeted traffic stop in Minneapolis of an illegal alien from Venezuela who was released into the country by Joe Biden in 2022. In an attempt to evade arrest, the subject fled the scene in his vehicle and crashed into a parked car. The subject then fled on foot. The law enforcement officer caught up to the subject on foot and attempted to apprehend him when the subject began to resist and violently assault the officer. While the subject and law enforcement were in a struggle on the ground, 2 subjects came out of a nearby apartment and also attacked the law enforcement officer with a snow shovel and broom handle. As the officer was being ambushed and attacked by the 2 individuals, the original subject got loose and began striking the officer with a shovel or broomstick. Fearing for his life and safety as he was being ambushed by 3 individuals, the officer fired defensive shots to defend his life. The initial subject was hit in the leg. All 3 subjects ran back into the apartment and barricaded themselves inside. The attacked officer and subject are both in the hospital. Both attackers are in custody. This is another attack. This attack on another brave member of law enforcement took place while Minnesota's top leaders, Governor Walz and Mayor Fry, are actively encouraging an organized resistance to ICE and federal law enforcement officers. Their hateful rhetoric and resistance against men and women who are simply trying to do their jobs must end. So a very lengthy statement there, Sean, but it sounds a whole lot more complicated than what we initially had, that this was one person involved with a shovel. It sounds like ICE was going after a Venezuelan illegal alien who had been caught and released at the border by the Biden administration in 2022. That person crashed into a parked car, got out and fled. ICE was chasing him down. And then while they were wrestling on the ground, 2 people came out of a nearby apartment and then started attacking the ICE officer with shovels. And during that ambush attack, that is when the officer pulled out his weapon, fired, and hit one of the suspects, who again is stable. So it sounds like the suspects are in custody, and this is being described to Fox News from DHS as yet another attack on ICE officers in Minneapolis, Sean.
There's still a lot that we don't know at this time, but what I can tell you for certain is that this is not sustainable. This is an impossible situation that our city is presently being put in. And at the same time, we are trying to find a way forward to keep people safe, to protect our neighbors, to maintain order. And we're in a position right now where we have residents that are asking the very limited number of police officers that we have to fight ICE agents on the street, to stand by their neighbors. We cannot be at a place right now in America not to stand by their neighbors, to fight ICE agents on the street. That we have to fight ICE agents on the street. Police officers, residents that are asking the very limited number of police officers that we have to fight ICE agents on the street, to stand by.
Why would you ask your police to fight other police? Think about what you're doing here.
By their neighbors. We cannot be at a place right now in America where we have 2 governmental entities that are literally fighting one another. Why are we put in this position? We're put in this position because we have approximately 600 police officers in Minneapolis, far fewer that are able to work at any given time. And there are approximately 3,000 ICE agents in the area. 3,000. The 600 police officers that
we could just arrest all of the Minneapolis PD and then replace them with federal agents. Isn't that how the Insurrection Act would work in theory?
We are charged on any given day with investigating crime, stopping homicides from taking place, preventing carjackings. That's the work of a police officer in a city. Meanwhile, we have ICE agents throughout our city and throughout our state who, along with Border Control, are creating chaos. This is not the path that we should be on right now in America. Thankfully, there's another path. And I want to talk to everybody who's out there, even people who aren't living in Minneapolis right now. Maybe you just put your kids to bed. Maybe you're cleaning up the dishes. I'm sure you love your family. There's no doubt in my mind that you love your town. Imagine if that city or that town was suddenly invaded by thousands of federal agents that do not share the values that you hold dear. Imagine.
That's literally what happened during desegregation. If you go back and watch a lot of those videos about desegregation, it was literally the National Guard with rifles and bayonets in small town America. And liberals were happy. Liberals were fine. Liberals will wave those pictures in your face like, look at what America can do. Now, today, they're not all that happy about federal agents doing exactly what they did before.
Hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad.
This is about targeting women of color in the United States of America. Don't tell me, because I didn't get a single apology.
Time has expired.
My life was threatened. Thank you.
Hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad.
Imagine if your daily routines were disrupted. The local cafe that you eat at was shut down because they're scared that their own family might get torn apart. Imagine if schools shut down and suddenly parents got to figure out what to do for daycare. This is not creating safety. It's certainly not creating safety when a huge percentage of the shootings that have taken place so far this year in Minneapolis have been by ICE. So let's be very clear. I've seen conduct from ICE that is disgusting and is intolerable. If it were your city, it would be unacceptable there too. And for anyone that is taking the bait tonight, stop. That is not helpful. Go home. We cannot counter Donald Trump's chaos with our own brand of chaos. And I have seen thousands of people throughout our city peacefully protesting. For those that have peacefully protested, I applaud you. For those that are taking the bait, you are not helping, and you are not helping the undocumented immigrants in our city.
Now, understand what he's doing. This is liberal communist signaling. The bad people that he's talking about can only hide in the crowd of protesters that he's encouraging. So the more he encourages protesters, the peaceful protesters, the more cover you're going to give to the bad people that you don't actually want to stop anyway. This is how the game is played.
You are not helping the people that call this place home. ICE can leave, and this massive deployment can come to an end. We have filed litigation to hopefully make it so. And at the same time, I'm deeply concerned that we don't have that kind of time. This is already the second shooting that we've had in a week. People are scared. The atmosphere is tense. But again, there is another option. We can stop going down this route together. We'll open it to any questions.
Families are being ripped apart. Americans are being brutalized. People are dying. People are dying in ICE custody. And the government is trying to stop anyone from conducting oversight of their brutality. And I
think
know
this is
that
live right
firsthand.
now on the House steps.
An ICE agent who reports to Kristi Noem shot and killed an American citizen in the street last week. Then, without a single one of the facts, Kristi Noem called Renee Nicole Good, the woman who ICE killed in her car, a domestic terrorist before she even knew her name. Let me speak directly to Secretary Noem today. You are terrible at doing your job. You are incompetent. You are shameless. But most of all, you are cruel. The American people do not want you. We do not want you. And we will do whatever we need to do to make sure you will not hold that post soon. God will judge you. And Democrats are going to remove you from office that you never deserved to hold in the first place. With that, I would like to call up my colleague, James Wickeshaw from Virginia.
Whitney Wild, who's on the ground now. Whitney, can you hear me? Whitney, what's happening around you?
Yep. Okay, we are near 23rd and Lindale. It's not an exact location, but we're a couple blocks away. Sorry, it's a little hard to breathe because they just let off several flashbangs, multiple tear gas canisters that were coming off all around us. And at one point, it became so foggy that my producer, Meredith Edwards, and I got separated from our photographer, Jonathan Shearer. Things have calmed down a little bit now, but you'll see. Can you walk with me, John? Are you okay to walk or no? You want to stay here? Okay. You can't see just over my side here. There's still multiple federal agents and a growing crowd, very angry here, following them all around the neighborhood from what we've seen. This is all because what we know, according to the Department of Homeland Security, around 6:50 Central Time, law enforcement was conducting an operation where they say that they were going after a specific target. And when they tried to approach that target, he ran, he jumped into a car, he fled in a vehicle and then crashed. Again, this is according to the Department of Homeland Security. Again, they're saying that in an attempt to evade arrest, the subject fled the scene in his vehicle and then crashed. And once law enforcement was able to catch up with that subject, they attempted to arrest that subject. He was fighting back while that officer and the subject were on the ground, apparently fighting, according to the Department of Homeland Security. Other people began attacking law enforcement. That's when the subject got loose and began striking the officer with a shovel or a broomstick. And that's when DHS says that the officer fired what they are calling defensive shots. They're now saying that that officer and the subject are in the hospital. The other two people who were engaged in this attack are in custody. But this is a city that is already on edge. And what you're seeing right now is a major reaction. Again, it's hard to see, and we'll try to get a little bit closer here in a minute, Abby. But there is a growing crowd here that is increasingly angry, that is following ICE, what we believe are ICE officers or other immigration agents throughout this neighborhood, screaming at them, telling them to leave in the strongest possible terms they can muster here. Meanwhile, ICE, trying to push back this crowd, was letting off tear gas canisters over and over and over. And at one point, Abby, they were going off all around us, and actually it became so chaotic that one bounced off my foot and bounced off my side. And that's when we got separated because the smoke was everywhere and we were having trouble reconnecting. But now we're back. Our fearless photographer, Jonathan Shearer, was right in the center of it, catching everything. If you guys are rolling on it, maybe we can run that video later. But that is the scene here, Abby, and it's static and it's going more so.
And
Back to
Whitney, as we're talking, if you need to move or relocate, please do. Stay safe while you are out there. But I want to ask you, because 6:50 is the time that, according to the Department of Homeland Security, this incident occurred. It's been now several hours. Is your sense that the reason that there are still ICE officers or federal agents on the scene is because they're doing something, they're doing active enforcement, or maybe they're investigating the shooting? And the folks that I'm hearing chanting, are people chanting? Are they blowing whistles? What are they doing on the ground?
They're chanting, they're blowing whistles, they're screaming at them to go home. You're going to hear more flashbangs in a second, I think. It sounded like one just a moment ago. They're surrounding these immigration officers and letting them know without any ambiguity that they do not like what they see and they want them to leave. This has been an ongoing scene throughout the city of Minneapolis after the shooting of Renee Nicole Good. The city has been quite angry. We've seen multiple protests, not just in Minneapolis, but all around the country. Certainly now, this is giving new reason for people to protest. Sorry, I'm just watching. We're here. It's louder than it looks. So I'm trying to figure out, Abby, sorry, I keep looking away.
So is it, I mean, what can you
like
estimate?
There are things going
Do you have a sense of the size of the crowd, and are more people coming to the scene because it's now known that there was an incident there?
I can't, it's so dark, Abby, that I can't tell what the size of the crowd is. Are you okay to walk, Jonathan? Do you want, Abby, we can walk and show you, hold on. I can't know what the size of the crowd is, but there's other law enforcement here, it looks like. I can't see who they are. It's so dark. They're in darker uniforms, so it could be local law enforcement, Abby. I'm just not sure. But when we were on our way, we saw at almost a dozen law enforcement vehicles screaming over to this location. So we're still trying to get a handle on what the roles of law enforcement are and what the federal agents who are still on the ground might be doing. Are they continuing to do immigration enforcement? We can't know in this moment. All we know is what we see. And we see that they're starting to cordon off this area over here. But I think this scene, Abby, could be between 50 and 100 people. Like, it's so dark, I can't really tell. But we can, are you guys okay to walk? Sorry, Abby, it's tough. And the conditions here are difficult because it's so icy.
It's icy and cold. Can you tell us though, Whitney, it is dark for us to see even what you're seeing. What kind of neighborhood are we even talking about here?
Abby, this neighborhood is not far from downtown. It's 10 minutes away. We're at 23rd and Lindale. What we have seen is multiple people driving out to ask us what we know. So when, to go back to what you're asking about whether or not people are if the crowd is growing, I think it is growing. And I think people are curious, at a minimum to know what's going on, asking us and those around them what happened and for details. They're also here to make their voices heard in the loudest way that they can at this moment, Abby.
All right, Whitney Wild, as you're walking around here, I'm seeing some folks that there's a man walking in front of you with, a illuminated vest. Is that law enforcement? Is that a protester? Do you have any sense of who he is and what he's doing?
I can't tell. It looks like he has a helmet and maybe a camera, so he could be, a member of the press as well. But we've certainly seen multiple people here who appear to be, I guess I would call them civilian medics. What we see a lot of times at protests like this is people who are prepared for flashbangs to go off, tear gas to go off, and identify themselves as the type of person who can help you. So right now, you're seeing, I'm going to try to come in front here. Still multiple federal agents here. I'd say at least 24 side by side here behind this police line. This now we are at 23rd and we're still at 23rd and Lindale, right, Meredith? Sorry, we've been walking around the neighborhood. So we're on 23rd now. This is where we believe this happened, but we're still, continuing to gather details. The most detail we have is from the Department of Homeland Security. Certainly their side of the narrative. We have reached out to other officials. We reached out to the Minneapolis Police Department to try to gather more information about what they know. But Abby, this is the scene here. It shows no signs of slowing down at all.
It's crazy how CNN crews can get the path inside of the liberal hostile takeover. Everybody else, they're gonna get G-checked. You can't just walk around freely, but CNN, they just do what they want.
ICE agents are going door to door, ordering people to point out where their neighbors of color live. They're pulling over people indiscriminately, including U.S. citizens, and demanding to see their papers. And at grocery stores, at bus stops, even at our schools, they're breaking windows, dragging pregnant women down the street, just plain grabbing Minnesotans and shoving them into unmarked vans, kidnapping innocent people with no warning and no due process. Let's be very, very clear. This long ago stopped being a matter of immigration enforcement. Instead, it's a campaign of organized brutality against the people of Minnesota by our own federal government. Last week, that campaign claimed the life of Renee Nicole Good. We've all watched the video. We've all seen what happened. And yet, instead of conducting an impartial investigation so we can hold accountable the officer responsible for Renee's death, the Trump administration is devoting the full power of the federal government to finding an excuse to attack the victim and her family. Just yesterday, 6 federal prosecutors, including the longtime career prosecutor leading the charge to investigate and eliminate fraud in our state's programs, quit their jobs rather than go along with this assault on the United States Constitution. But as bad as it's been, Donald Trump intends for it to get worse. This week, he went online to promise that, quote, the day of retribution and reckoning is coming. That's a direct threat against the people of this state who dared to vote against him 3 times and who continue to stand up for freedom with courage and empathy and profound grace. All across Minnesota, people are stepping up to help their neighbors who are being unjustly and unlawfully targeted. They're distributing care packages and walking kids to school and raising their voices in peaceful protest, even though doing so has made many of our fellow Minnesotans targets for violent retribution. Folks, I know it's scary, and I know it's absurd that we all have to be defending law and order, justice, and humanity while also caring for our families and trying to do our jobs. So tonight, let me say once again to Donald Trump and Kristi Noem, end this occupation. You've done enough. Let me say 4 critical things to the people of Minnesota. 4 things I want you to hear as you watch the news and look out for your neighbors. First, Donald Trump wants this chaos. He wants confusion. And yes, he wants more violence on our streets. We cannot give him what he wants. We must protest loudly, urgently, but also peacefully. Indeed, as hard as we will fight in the courts and at the ballot box, we cannot and will not let violence prevail. You're angry, I'm angry. Angry is not a strong enough word, but we must remain peaceful. Second, you are not powerless, you are not helpless, and you are certainly not alone. All across Minnesota, people are learning about opportunities, not just to resist, but to help people who are in danger. Thousands upon thousands of our fellow Minnesotans are going to be relying on mutual aid in the days and weeks to come, and they need our support. Tonight, I want to share another way you can help. Witness. Help us establish a record of exactly what's happening in our communities. You have an absolute right to peacefully film ICE agents as they conduct these activities. So carry your phone with you at all times. And if you see these ICE agents in your neighborhood, take out that phone and hit record. Help us create a database of the atrocities against Minnesotans, not just to establish a record for posterity, but to bank evidence for future prosecution. The third thing I want to say to you tonight is we will not have to live like this forever. Accountability is coming at the voting booth and in court. We will reclaim our communities from Donald Trump. We will reestablish a sense of safety for our neighbors. And we will bring an end to this moment of chaos, confusion, and trauma. We will find a way to move forward, and we'll do it together. And we'll not be alone. Every day, we are working with business leaders, faith leaders, legal experts, and elected officials from across this country. They've all seen what Donald Trump is trying to do to our state, and they know their states could be next. And that brings me to the 4th thing I want to say tonight, Minnesota. How incredibly proud I am of the way that you've risen to meet this unbearable moment. But I'm not at all surprised, because this is who we are. Minnesotans believe in the rule of law, and Minnesotans believe in the dignity of all people. We're a place where there's room for everybody, no matter who you are or who you love or where you came from. A place where we feed our kids, we take care of our neighbors, and we look out for those in the shadows of life. We're an island of decency in a country being driven towards cruelty. We will remain an island of decency, of justice, of community, of peace. And tonight I come before you simply to ask, don't let anyone take that away from us. Thank you, protect each other, and may God bless the people of Minnesota.
Now, he mentioned bringing your phones to record atrocities and document things for posterity. And earlier, you heard Kristi Noem talk about federal vehicles being attacked and busted open and documents taken out of it. And won't you know, just so happens to happen that people were on ground with cameras documenting atrocities. How about that?
Hey, I picked the rims from off that motherfucking stuff. Do we have a bed or a camera here? I'm taking the rims and everything. Lock that shit!
So he's using a crowbar to open up a box in the back. It looks like some type of tactical box. Probably has weapons inside of it. This is like the part of the movie where the rebels, they've attacked an enemy convoy, and now they've armed themselves with the enemy's weapons.
I ain't getting nobody shit, don't worry.
Yeah, we knew it was ice car. The police got us. U.S. government license plate in here.
Okay, so it was a pretty safe bet. Okay. Yeah. So far, I haven't seen them do it to any like civil. So far, I don't. Doesn't mean it hasn't happened. I just haven't seen it yet.
If we get in the car, figure out if they have to help us. Yeah, do it.
Hey, what's in the truck though?
Ice.
Y'all keep putting me on camera, right? I'm gonna get the money, right?
Oh, shit. Out of line.
Ooh, don't touch that with your bare hands.
Oh shit. Fuck, that was dumb.
Where'd you touch it? Where'd you touch it?
I thought the whole.
Hey,
I think it was
shit down in
bleak.
the sewer, some shit. Get rid of that shit. Hey, don't leave it in there. You already touched it already. Throw it in the sewer.
Appreciate you, man.
Why wouldn't we take that? Why wouldn't somebody take that?
What happened? What's the purpose? In what context?
Hey, listen, I'll tell y'all nothing. They own the Snapchat, so they gonna be on y'all ass if y'all recording this. They gonna be on your ass. They gonna be on your ass. Your ass is a witness. Hey, don't hit them. We're gonna break that bitch.
Please don't. They don't fuck with Minneapolis. They got the motherfucking thing.
Slick on the back of that bitch.
Hey, listen.
Back up. Watch out.
That shit sounds empty, man.
Oh, you doing okay, man? I'm okay. How are you?
Oh, yeah, dude, there's nothing in there.
There could be coins in there.
I am the individual who called out that Nazi the day before. Good morning, Minnesota. My name is Kyle, and I'm Antifa, live from the heart of Minneapolis. I've been on the front lines since the start of this. I am the individual who called out that Nazi the day before they came and murdered Renee Good. We are at an inflection point here. This week is important. Over the course of the last 24 hours, an additional 1,500 or more ICE agents have been sent to Minnesota. We found them checking into hotels all over the city, and they have begun door-to-door campaigns in areas of our city, kicking in front doors, pointing long guns at people's faces. Minnesota, we have castle doctrine. To every patriot out there, we will reject this at our doors. And to every armed citizen, you have a choice to make whether you allow this to stand in our community or not. We are the Iron Front. It is an ideology.
We are not going to shop. We are not going to work. We are not going to school on Friday, January 23rd. And so for some people, they call that a strike. For many of us, we say that this is our right to refusal until something changes. We're doing it with unions, like the St. Paul Federation of Educators, Unite Here, Local 17, SEIU, Local 26, our ATU, our transit union here in Minnesota, and many, many more unions are gathering. We are asking every single person, every family member, every teacher, every bus driver, every childcare worker to come together, to be in community, to stand with one another. That's exactly what Renee Good was doing, standing up for her neighbor. Her whistleblowing was returned by bullets. We cannot let that stand. Minnesota will not continue to be a testing ground for the kind of fear and violence that is expected for the rest of this country. We will not allow that to happen. There are lies being spewed about our neighbors here to give an excuse to try to validate why we have thousands of masked officers here harming our people and harming us, taking citizens from where they work, beating people up and dropping them off at random locations. This is not rumor. We are seeing it with our own eyes every single day. And so now is the time. If you ever wondered for yourself, when is the time that we do something different? When is the time that we stand up and say that this has to change, that this needs to end? The time is now.
I need to get the kids on this block, and we need these people to stop shooting. Get the fuck out! They need to get the fuck out! They need to get the fuck out! Leave! 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 We have families there! We have kids here! Get the fuck out! Get the fuck out! Shut up! Shut up! They got kids on this block.
Okay? They don't care. Hold up. Hold the fuck up. They understand what the fuck I'm saying. I'm back talking to y'all. Hey, look. They got kids in every last one of these houses. And they're watching and they're looking. What the fuck are we doing? What are we doing? That part. What are we doing? What are we doing? They got
They don't
kids.
care! They don't fucking care! They don't care! They don't care! We live in these
Listen, shut up.
Call of Duty ass
What are you wearing camo for? Fuck you.
We have children here!
Fuck you. Fuck you. They got kids.
Go home,
Nazis!
Nazis! Go home, Nazis!
This house, no, shut up. I live around.
You hate America. Get out. Get out of here.
Stop. Who the fuck goes there? You want to fight? You want to fight? Who the fuck goes there? Who want to fight? Who want to?
Black America is kind of 50-50, split down the middle on this issue. They desperately want to get Black people involved in their protests, but in reality, most niggas don't really care. You know, you got a bunch of liberal Blacks who they're going to be in part of this stuff no matter what it is, but a lot of them just don't care.
Fucking fight. Who want to fight me? I promise. I'll fight anybody. Stop doing that to these fucking people. Because they got kids in these houses. They got kids. I don't give a fuck who live around here. My daughter live around here, nigga. All right? What you want to do? You want to throw these bitches? Fuck on with you. All right, shut the fuck up if you ain't trying to fight, nigga. Because y'all on the north side now. This is not the south side. Understand? This is not the south side. This is the north side. They got Black kids. They got some white kids. They got white kids. And they got all type of kids over here. Fuck y'all talking about. Y'all don't want to fight, shut the fuck up.
About let me quickly ask you about that. Do you think there is any justification from DHS, from ICE, from federal authorities for shooting someone? They did so in this case, saying that they were attacked as they were trying to arrest someone, and that they were attacked by this person, and then they ended up using their weapon. Do you think there's any justification there?
We saw them use the same narrative tactic that was circulated by numerous media outlets when Renee Good was shot and killed around this time last week, where they blamed the victims, same with they're blaming the protesters and regular people who are going out every single day risking their lives, while federal agents point flash grenades, tear gas canisters, and AK-47s in their faces. Residents are demonstrating a huge amount of courage right now, and it's not being matched by our elected officials to do everything we can to get ICE out of our community. And there's no justification for the cruelty that they've demonstrated in our communities. And what I hear when they say that is, we want you to stand by the sidelines and allow us to separate families, to allow us to racially profile residents at our discretion, and even shoot and kill civilians at our discretion. And we expect immunity, and we expect you to allow us to set that as the new norm when we leave Minneapolis and go to our next city to terrorize. That is not what we should be accepting. There's no justification for it. And this is something that I'm proud that Minneapolis and Minnesota residents are standing up against.
You don't want the protests to stop, I understand. Correct?
I'm sorry, you
do not want the protests to stop. You do not want people to stop in their protesting, as the mayor has sort of requested that people calm down. As he put it, he's like, this is, while it's unacceptable what's happening, it's not sustainable. And he's saying, don't take the bait. Do you agree with him?
I'm confused as to what bait is being taken. And I think what people on the ground hear when
They will not back down. The liberals don't want to slow down. They don't even think they're doing anything wrong. So we'll see how far they push this thing.
and our Mayor Jacob Fry, say those type of things, or when our chief of police says, we need you to stand down. What people are hearing is stand down, don't take action. We're not going to take action either because our local leaders have not taken any action to actually protect their residents. We need you to stand down and allow ICE to do their jobs and do their jobs of shooting residents and expecting you immunity, to profile residents during traffic stops or on their way to take the bus to get to work. We want to allow you ICE agents to do that job. And residents justifiably for the past several weeks have said no. If elected leaders are not going to show up in this moment to protect and care for our neighbors, we will. And we will do so as seen in the video footage with whistles. Whistles from residents to federal law enforcement agents holding AK-47s should never be equated as the same level of violence or threat to our communities. People literally are walking around using whistles, using pots and pans to make noise, to alert neighbors of ICE being in their communities. They're doing fundraisers to help residents cover rent. Our residents are showing so much courage, and I'm glad that they're out in our communities because they're doing a lot more than elected officials like myself who were charged with delivering material changes in moments like this to truly get ICE out of Minnesota. So yes,
Understood.
I am grateful for our community members for showing up.
Now, she says that people are just, blowing whistles and collecting rent, but I never believe them when they say that.
If there were neighbors and others who came out to help this person, that is just an example of Minnesota being a place where we help our neighbors. And we are clear that the ICE agents have been coming here, and there's over 2,000 of them. And they've been attacking and terrorizing our state. So yes, neighbors will come out and be helpful. I'm not certain if they had brooms or a shovel. That is to be further investigated.
If they did, in fact, have some sort of weapons to use to attack the ICE officer, would that change your opinion of whatever unfolded next?
Actually, no, right? Because from our vantage point, we wanted to make sure and always wanted to make sure that Minnesotans are being dealt with properly. And when we think in terms of any pursuit or any apprehension of anyone, there's a way for you to do your work where it's respectful and it's fair. We unfortunately have seen ICE not be respectful, not be fair, but to be illegal and to attack and to be very aggressive with Minnesotans. And to see that the federal government has made a decision to attack and send more and more agents here and allow them to be allow them to misbehave, we think that's a tragedy and a travesty.
President Trump is now making a new and serious threat after protests in Minneapolis grew even more chaotic overnight. And there was another shooting involving a federal agent. This agent allegedly ambushed. The president posting this, we'll put it up for you, saying that if Minnesota's politicians don't obey the law and stop the professional agitators and insurrectionists from attacking the patriots of ICE, I will institute the Insurrection Act. So that could lead to him deploying U.S. troops on U.S. soil in that state. Elena, let me start with you. This has now been taken to a whole new level by the president with this threat. What are you hearing about this?
Yeah, this is a very big deal. And I should know that this is something we've heard President Trump, of course, threaten in the past. He did so during his first term, particularly around the George Floyd protests that had erupted in 2020. But he also recently did it as well when talking about,
who?
wanting to crack
The
down
what protest?
on, different types of protests, but even more specifically, maybe having the military help with law enforcement and trying to crack down on crime and deportations in cities like Los Angeles, Portland, and Chicago. But part of the reason this is such a big deal, let me just break down what the Insurrection Act actually is. It is a 19th century law. It's normally considered a last resort for presidents, but it gives presidents the authority to call on active duty military. So you could see potentially people like the Marines or soldiers, National Guard included in that, going into the streets of U.S. cities for law enforcement activities. And it's normally used only in certain specific cases. It can be used at the objection of local leaders. And so that carries its own weight here. Now, in my conversations with Trump officials, this was true during the first term, but even more so now, I should argue, in the president's second term, they have essentially told me that this is something they do not want, that they've been very hesitant to essentially go there despite the president threatening this. Some of that is because of the legal complications, but even more so because of the political ones. And having this type of law enforcement military in the streets, of course, would potentially escalate things so much further. And so this has all been a calculation behind the scenes. Of course, our goal today is to figure out how serious the president is actually about this and whether they're actually making plans potentially to do something to invoke this act, Kate.
Absolutely. Elena, thank you so much for that.
Joining us now, Andrew McCabe, the CNN senior law enforcement analyst and former deputy director of the FBI. Andrew, thanks so much for joining us. Last night, as you know, Minneapolis saw yet a new wave of very disturbing protests and clashes with police. 1 week ago was the ICE shooting death of Renee Good, and now the president is threatening to invoke what's called the Insurrection Act. 5 years ago, Minneapolis was rocked by violent protests after the police murder of George Floyd. Andy, is Minneapolis sitting on a powder keg right now?
Absolutely, they are, Wolf. And I think you saw that very clearly last night. I think the chaos, the escalation in violence, the overly tactical way that law enforcement responded to that assemblage of protesters, they're all very obviously related to the fact that the law enforcement team on the ground having to deal with this situation is not one that is trained for or equipped for or experienced in dealing with large crowd control. These are federal agents. They're not police officers. There's not as many of them as you would need to handle a large crowd. Think about the way that we've seen effective law enforcement responses to large crowds, large protests, whether they be over the George Floyd death or whatever. You typically see a massive number of police officers in riot gear, not carrying shoulder-fired weapons, but rather carrying shields and sometimes batons, less than lethal weapons. And they basically move together in a very systematic way to regain territory and disperse the protesters. Right now, you have a much smaller force, totally focused on a tactical response. Half of them are carrying M4s and other very heavy shoulder-fired weapons, rifles. This is a powder keg, and last night you saw it just about go off.
Yeah, it's just not good all around, right? And now you have the president threatening this morning to invoke what's called the Insurrection Act. He said, quote, if the corrupt politicians of Minnesota don't obey the law and stop the professional agitators and insurrectionists from attacking the patriots of ICE who are only trying to do their job, I will institute the Insurrection Act. Let's remind everyone of what the Insurrection Act is. It allows the president to deploy the U.S. military domestically and use that force against citizens. It can only be employed if there's an insurrection or interference with state or federal law. So, Andy, as a former deputy director of the FBI and acting director, do you see any grounds to legitimize the use of the Insurrection Act here?
No, absolutely not. I think there's a lot of indicators on the ground that point towards the need for a much better and very different law enforcement response. This is, we have had, unfortunately, violent protests in this country for a number of different reasons, different issues over the last couple of years. And in not one of them has any other president declared to bring in the United States military to take over a city under the Insurrection Act. What you have here is the government, unlike the response to George Floyd, this is an issue in which the government could very quickly de-escalate the tension and the violence on the ground simply by conducting their business differently, right? By pulling back some of these ICE officers, by bringing a less aggressive tactical approach to this entire issue of finding people who are illegally here in this country. That's why there's violence and unrest on the street. Now, I'm not saying that violence by protesters is ever necessary or justifiable under any circumstances. It is not. But it is the government that's ratcheting up the tension and the violence here, and they could easily turn that off by simply conducting themselves differently.
Just really quickly to follow up, I mean, you had the situation with the shooting overnight, and DHS says that a Venezuelan national tried to flee and attacked the ICE officer trying to arrest him. I mean, in that situation, do you think a shooting was justified? In that case, he was shot in the leg, that Venezuelan national.
Well, it's very hard to say, Pamela, because we know almost nothing about this. And the reason is that the government's response, their comments in the media following the Renee Good shooting 1 week ago have proven to us all that we cannot take their statements for granted. We cannot accept what the government is telling us whole cloth. They have no credibility in terms of the way that they are talking about and characterizing the people involved in these events. They absolutely mischaracterized, deliberately mischaracterized Ms. Good and her partner as terrorists. They are not terrorists. They didn't commit any act of terrorism. They haven't been alleged to have committed a crime with an indictment or anything like that. So we know that we can't trust what the government is saying about what's happening on the ground. So now you think about what happened last night, and we essentially know nothing at this point. So it's really hard to evaluate that.
We're waiting to hear from the Minnesota officials to get some more details, because right now we only have the DHS side of things.
All right, Andrew McCabe, as usual, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Joining me now is Robin Wansley, a Democrat on the Minneapolis City Council. I want to start with this. The president has just amped things up, saying he is threatening to use the Insurrection Act if things do not calm down there in Minneapolis, in Minnesota. What is your response to that?
Yeah, so just first want to offer clarification. I am the city's first Black Democratic Socialist city council member, minority leader. In terms of Trump threatening to use the Insurrection Act, I don't think any of us on the ground here are surprised. Essentially, what Trump has been inching to do since he first deployed ICE agents to Minneapolis about 6 weeks ago was really to build to this place where he can normalize using his administrative powers to go to war with local cities who do not fall in alignment with his administration's political goals, which is to divide people, terrorize people, keep people in poverty, deprive working class people of their basic needs, and also their civil liberties. And Minneapolis is a testing ground in which he's trying to normalize, legalize these very terroristic actions that's coming from our own administration here in the US that we often see happen abroad, actions that we wage against communities abroad. He's doing that right here in his own homelands, his own country that he took an oath to serve and protect. So I am not surprised. And it's because of these dynamics that it's even more imperative that elected officials like myself needs to be doing everything we can to get ICE out of Minneapolis, ICE out of Minnesota.
he had some charges and said he had to put her removal. And they didn't even show us this stupid ass thing. This is what they gave me. This is... No. Bring him back. Bring him back. It doesn't even look legit. It doesn't even look legit. It doesn't even look legit. This doesn't even look like something they did at court. There's nothing there. That's an authorized immigration officer. Do you see this They did all of this for one fucking individual. All this for one individual. And he's not an immigrant, right? Yeah, he's not. He's an immigrant. He has no charges. Like, why are they forced that? Of course not. I'm immigration officer. No judge. Don't worry. Don't worry. No judge. There's a piece of paper that they're pulling off of the pad in their car. Yeah, because you can tell from right over here. This is insane. I don't even think it's a war. Yeah, it's not. Remember not to sign any papers without having a lawyer. From the district court. From the Department of I think he's in the fuck out. Get the fuck out. Get the fuck out of here. Are you afraid? You should be.
Yeah, I think that's about enough of that we can take for 1 minute. Shout out to Miss Cantrell with the 199. Get a job drop.
What's wrong with you?
with y'all? You niggas are crazy.
Here we go.
I tried.
All right,
I tried.
All right.
We're good. We're good. We're good.
You're good.
We're good.
Cool.
We're good. I tried my best. Sorry,
All
boys.
right.
Hit him, guys. Why are you afraid of him? He's gonna kill someone.
This is now a federal felony.
Knock him out.
Knock him out. Hit him.
Oh, they're pointing guns out the window.
It's gonna be block him. Block him. Block him. Block him.
Box. Tight box.
Yep.
Tight box.
Good. Watch your crossfire. Watch the crossfire.
Crossfire.
Apparently they're getting active over there. Getting really, really active over there.
Let's bring in MS Now reporter Nnamdi Agwanwu live from Minneapolis, MS Now White House reporter Laura Barone-Lopez, and former Chief of Homeland Security and Intelligence for the District of Columbia, Danelle Harvin. Nnamdi, what's the latest on the investigation into this new shooting? And take us through what you saw last night following this new ICE-involved shooting.
Yeah, Anna, according to the Department of Homeland Security, we know that the Venezuelan immigrant that was at that ICE was intending to apprehend, was taken to the hospital to be treated for his wounds. It is now in custody. We know that 2 additional suspects that were involved in that scuffle are also now in custody. And as far as what we saw last night, we were here when all of this was going down, as we saw crowds continue to form and get into increasingly volatile clashes with federal law enforcement and also local PD that initially responded to some of these reports. I want to show you the road here because it tells a lot of the story of how violent that clash was. All of these white marks you see here like this. This is what's called a blast ball, and it was used last night. What it does, essentially, when it's thrown by federal agents, it creates a loud bang sound. It also creates a flash of light, and also it has rubber pellets that then just spread and hit everyone nearby. So the fact that we're still fighting this after cleaning crews came on the scene, after we saw volunteers this morning come and pick stuff up, this gives you a picture of just how volatile things were and the amount of non-lethal resources that these agents had to use to try to contain this crowd. All of this comes as we've heard from Governor Walz and Mayor Fry warning that violent protests like we saw last night could incite the federal government to have even more of a response here, which of course would continue to upset many of the protesters we spoke to. I want to play for you comments from Mayor Fry last night, and I want you to hear the warning he's issuing to residents of this city.
For anyone that is taking the bait tonight, stop. That is not helpful. Go home. We cannot counter Donald Trump's chaos with our own brand of chaos. And I have seen thousands of people throughout our city peacefully protesting. For those that have peacefully protested, I applaud you. For those that are taking the bait, you are not helping, and you are not helping the undocumented immigrants in our city.
Anna, we will tell you that in the immediate aftermath of that shooting last night, we are already hearing from organizers that more mass demonstrations could be on the way as anger continues over the presence of these federal personnel in the city.
Nnamdi Agwanwu, thank you so much for that reporting. Laura, President Trump posted this morning about using the Insurrection Act. What exactly is he saying?
That's right, Anna. This is certainly not the first time the president has threatened to use the Insurrection Act, but he is again now, maybe more forcefully than he ever has before, is threatening to use it. He posted on True Social this morning that if the corrupt politicians of Minnesota don't obey the law and stop the professional agitators and insurrectionists from attacking the patriots of ICE, who are only there to do their job, the president says, quote, I will institute the Insurrection Act. And he talks about how other presidents have done so before. Just to note, Anna, the last time the Insurrection Act was invoked was in 1992 during the Rodney King riots in Los Angeles. And the last time it was invoked over the objections of a governor who didn't want this to be invoked to send in the military was in the 1960s. Now, again, as I said, this is something the president has threatened going back all the way to his first term. He wanted to do it during the 2020 George Floyd protests. There was talk from MAGA figures about doing it after the 2020 election when they wanted to keep Trump unlawfully in power. But this is something that the president and Stephen Miller have also threatened as recently as last fall, repeatedly talking about wanting to potentially do this if they were blocked by the courts and the actions, if they felt like they were resisted on the ground by local leaders. And you see that the president has ratcheted up his rhetoric, calling Americans who are protesting, quote, domestic terrorists, and saying that he wants to invoke this to be able to put military and more forces on the ground of an American city. And the Insurrection Act really does give him the power to do that. There's very limitations on what he's able to call an insurrection. So if he decides he wants to do this, it may very well be challenged in courts. But according to legal experts I've talked to, he has wide parameter here to invoke the Insurrection Act.
Danelle, after what we saw take place last night and in recent days, what are your observations? Is what we're seeing from these federal immigration agents actually making the city safer?
Well, if you speak to the Trump administration, they say that they're trying to bring the city to a safer place. I will tell you from the local perspective that this chaos is unfolding because you have a collision course between the administration, state and local officials, and the population there. They don't want ICE there. Quite frankly, I think that when you put more ICE agents into a volatile situation like this, it only can turn out like it turned out last night. ICE and federal authorities aren't trained to de-escalate. They're not trained in civil disturbance. That's the state and locals' job. Unfortunately, however, the state and locals aren't collaborating, and there's no trust between the state and locals and federal officials. So they're not going to have law enforcement out there that is trained in how to de-escalate and how to treat civil disturbance in a humane way. And so what you see, the images that you're showing right now, is what's going to play out probably in the days to come.
And not to mention that the local law enforcement is way outmatched compared to the sheer number of federal agents sent in. Based on what we're hearing from the mayor, it's 600 local law enforcement to some 3,000 federal agents. Danelle, we have such little information about this latest shooting. Again, the narrative of what happens all coming really from DHS, which unwaveringly defends its agents. It condemns the actions of pretty much anyone they come in conflict with. Right now, a lot of Americans don't trust the information coming from the federal government. Remember, even a federal judge in Chicago questioned if Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bavino was telling the truth about use of force by agents in that city, calling statements simply not credible. How concerning is this growing distrust and not being able to believe what the administration is saying in an encounter like this?
It's extremely concerning. And from a Homeland Security perspective, I find that we're on a precipice of truth versus non-truth. So if you take the current DHS Secretary, Kristi Noem, at her word, the ICE agent that shot Ms. Good was following his training, his tactics, and policies. If that's the case and you take her at her word, then we have a big problem, because what we have is ICE agents that are not practicing proper police or law enforcement officer safety and survivability. I went to the police academy. I actually reached out to my old sergeant. I said, we never were trained to stand in front of a moving vehicle or a vehicle with an occupied person. That is what they call the kill zone. They call it the kill zone because officers can get killed standing in front of a car. You're taught to approach from the rear or the front of the car. So with that said, if you take Kristi Noem at her word and ICE officers are being trained to do that, then we have a problem with ICE officers potentially getting hurt or killed or having to do that to somebody else. The last thing I'll say is that that was a 10-year veteran that was involved in that incident last week. We have ICE agents that are rolling off the assembly line, so to speak, with far, far less training. News reporting consists of 47 days of training for these new ICE officers. I will tell you that in many states, you can become an animal control officer, but you need twice as much training. So think about that. Your local dog catcher will need more training to carry a firearm and execute warrants and arrest people than an ICE agent. And that's what's concerning.
Danelle Harvin, Laura Barone Lopez, thank you both.
Appreciate you guys for watching. Shout out to all the ICE agents out there. We're going to wrap this one up right now. I'm going to come back a little bit later with another show. I'm working on another idea right now. We got to take another look at the liberal white women going crazy right now.
When I die, I'ma go to Snow Bunny Heaven. Snow Bunny Heaven.
But anyway, I'm working on another show, so we'll be back later on this afternoon. Hit that like button, guys. I will catch you later. Appreciate you coming out.
It's done. It's done. It's done. It's done. It's done.